Hello, Pickles. Do you think it's time I did a new episode? Do you think it's time? Do you think it's begun? Wait, Pickles, do you? I think it's time, don't you?
Doesn't matter what they see, you will always be a part of me. I know I'll never let you go. I'll never let you go. Doesn't matter what they see, you will always be a part of me. I know I'll never let you.
So, hello, welcome to what will now be my new channel, sort of a way of things, if you'd like. This is going to be based upon more music style stuff. I've been trying to do this for a while, and this is my first go at really truly nailing that. So why am I doing this? Because one, I think that there's not enough stuff on YouTube, on the internet generally, about music computers. There's plenty of stuff about plugins though, and a number of other elements, but I feel a lot of it's very kind of, how should we say, watered over, either because there's a lot of sponsorship going on or whatever there might be out there. And I just feel that we really need a bit more of something real. So I'm going to dive straight in. Over the last year, I've seriously updated my kit. I can now offer mixing and mastering services. If anybody is interested, please get in touch. I have some work coming in as we speak. So any of that I can talk about, I will. Obviously, I will show you tips and tricks, things that I know, and I'm going to go into those more on some of the future videos that I do. So keep an eye out for that. I'm going to talk about how plugins are. They're a bit of a mix at the moment as to what the sort of quality is like. You have to watch out for the liars out there. There's plenty of stuff on the internet. I love watching stuff by Paul Third. He does some great videos, sort of analyzing scientifically the problems that he's found within plugins and things to watch out for so that you don't get missold on anything. So, with that said, let's jump straight in. This first video, which I've been wanting to do for ages, and I've put off and tried, but I just didn't quite know how to phrase some of the things I wanted to say about the MacBook M1 processor. Now we've got the MacBook M2 coming out, the Air M2 processor. It's a real mixed bag at the moment, and I really think if you're going to buy one, if you're coming from Intel, you've got two questions to ask yourself. What does the M2 give you? Okay, it does give you some feature advancements, but there's a huge catch. There's a price jump. You can still get the M1 for less than the M2, and I think that you won't really see much of a difference in the M2 for music production. Watch out, because there's a lot of video content creators online who talk about the MacBooks as though they are the only thing you're going to use it for is video rendering and stuff. This is what I will say. If you're coming from an Intel-based machine and you go to a Apple Silicon chip, you're going to notice the difference. If you're going from an Apple Silicon chip to an Apple Silicon chip, you might notice the difference. I'm sure that they'll get some benchmarks up and everybody will go crazy for the scores of the M2. It's up to you what you can afford. If you're a music producer like me and you're going to go for something in the Air category, I can give you the advantages right now. First of all, okay, the performance is not far off the Intel i9 processor that was in the 16-inch MacBook Pro model a few years ago. So that's where I came from. I've noticed there is a bit of a drop, but some of that can be accounted for the fact that the M1 hardware has not had all the plugins configured for it yet. They're getting there, and on top of that, they've got to tweak them to get the performance to be better. And it's getting there. It's almost there. How close? I noticed that every few months, some updates come out, and slowly the system performs better. There are a couple of issues to watch out for, and we'll look at those in a moment. The second thing I would suggest to look at is the battery life, which is really, really good. Okay, coming from an Intel-based Mac, this just completely wipes the floor with it. If you're like me, and if you know how I like to work, you'll know that I like to go out and about and do things, and I like the fact that the the laptop can last. I've had to carry battery packs with me in the past. Gone now. I can take my MacBook out now. I can use it out and about, and I can get at least about 6 hours out of one of these. So that's definitely something that I would certainly say is the biggest advantage to the M1. Another thing, though, to add is that the M1 is also quicker to charge, requires a smaller power supply than the old i9. You can have the brightness up more. Just power-wise, the whole thing is on another level. And that, to me, is one of the big things that you'll like about this machine. It's so much lighter as well. The i9, it had a big screen. It had the 16-inch screen, and for that, it was lovely. But I wouldn't say that it's something that I would really want to cart around with me. I did, and I actually had a protective case on it as well, because I know what I'm like. I'm clumsy. That added a humongous amount of extra weight. The whole thing weighed so much. And when I took it abroad, when I went on holiday last year, it was just you could feel it. You could really feel it on your shoulder. I'm not saying that, you know, oh, be a wimp, get the heavier one. I'm just saying, if you want something lighter and you're carrying other things with it, then that's something to consider. So for me, the M1 is almost great. However, there are definitely still software issues with it. I don't know where they're coming from specifically, whether they're plugins or whether they're the actual running of the operating system. But I would say that I think that we're sort of missing out on a few things at the moment. One of the things I have noticed is that certain things will cause your CPU to spike. And when I say spike, I've put some plugins on the master bus. And because of the way Logic spreads the plugins over the processor scaling, if you'd like to call it that, is that sometimes it can just bung the whole lot on one of the processors and it can just max it out. All your others are sat there 25% tickling away, and you're sort of thinking to yourself, oh, this is a bit rubbish, isn't it? So I found the trick is in Logic is to go down, draw down. I'll show you on the screen now. Draw down, turn off all the channel strips. That can be a good one. Sometimes you might also have to go through and try and figure out what plugin's doing it. For example, I think it was Isotope's vocal synth set up on my computer, and it wasn't picking up my iLok because I hadn't plugged it in. I have some of my iLok licenses on the computer and in the cloud, and a few on my iLok as well. And I noticed that it hadn't picked it up, and it was just really killing the CPU, asking obviously for some sort of authorization, and it was like, really? So you might say, well, that's not very good. It's like, well, I don't know. I've gone through and then I've changed and powered off plugins and stuff. It's rescaled across the processors, and it's sat back down there at 25-30% again. What can I get? With a combination of VST instruments and vocals, I have run it up to about 40 to 50 channels, or tracks, I should say, 40 or 50 tracks, and I don't tend to go over 50%. Now, this can vary depending on what plugins you use, and I have sort of crafted a few ways that I like to work, particularly on an M1 processor. So I would say that you can achieve probably around about 80 tracks comfortably on a MacBook Air. I hope you've enjoyed my little talk about the M1 Mac. I'm also going to look at, in the future, we've got this, which is the SH101 recreation by Softube. It's the Model 82, I believe. It is a fantastic recreation of the synthesizer. I think it's almost spot on. I don't think you're going to find anything software-wise as good as this. I would grab it quick. There's some deals on there where you can get it for around 60 quid. If you want an SH101 and you want something that's almost indistinguishable from the real thing, in fact, I doubt most of us could tell the difference. And I guarantee you, if you put this into a song, There's no way you would tell a difference at all. This thing is absolutely spot on, from the filters to the sort of the saw waves. Everything about it is just fantastic. Just wanted to add, because I know how much you know how much I love portability. So here's a few tips and tricks if you're trying to find some great ways to go portable. Now, behind me is my Babyface Pro FS, which is quite small. Yeah, you can see there it's quite small. However, this device here is really small. And I picked one of these up recently because I wanted something that I could travel with and record some vocals with. Now, what's unique about this, and there is a new version of this now, but I picked this up cheap secondhand, and let me finish off where I'm going with this. It has a built-in condenser microphone, which sounds okay. It's not amazing, but it's as good as some of the portable mics I was taking abroad with me when I was traveling. It's also incredibly light. It's plastic, but I picked one of these up for 30 quid. 30 secondhand. Now, I've seen them vary up and down the price range. You might find some for 50 quid, 60 quid. Anyway, that's not the main point here. Oh, obviously, it's one of the main points. It is cheap as chips. It can go up to 24-bit, 48 kilohertz, this version. If you're really sort of fussy about these things, you can go and buy yourself the new versions, which go right up to 96 kilohertz. It's got a headphone output, which is very good. It has the Apogee digital to analog converters in there, and vice versa, which is it as good as the RME? Probably not quite as good, but it's not. Yeah, these are sorts of things that you're not going to tell a huge difference with. I mean, I prefer to have this sort of thing when I'm mastering through my Amphion speakers back here. But the reason I got this is because not only is it light, cheap, portable, and it encompasses the microphone in there as well, is the all-in-one nature of being able to have everything just to take with me. That's all I need. I don't have to worry about a microphone, an XLR cable, which all adds significant weight when you're traveling. One of the advantages with this particular device is that although there is software that was provided by Apogee, it no longer works on the M1 Mac. But this thing is what's called core audio compliant, which means it functions through Logic's own drivers. And because of that, no, sorry, not Logic, it functions through the MacBook's own system of driver, which means that basically you don't need the software. The only limitation that you have with this is that the phantom power is off by default, and the only way to switch it on here is to go into the software and to click and turn it on. Now you're probably thinking, oh, that's a bit of a showstopper. I've got a phantom power mic. There is a trick. It's on Apogee's website where you can go onto a MacBook that was pre-M1, and you can go and flick a switch to get it on. And then you can copy the file across. And as long as you keep a copy of the file, you can just bung it in and it will force the phantom power to stay on the device. So if you've got somebody who's still got one of the older Intel Macs, or you've got one yourself at the moment, you could get something like that. It seems like a bit of a bodge, but I'll tell you why that doesn't really matter to me. And that's because I'm not going to use it. The main thing for me is that this thing has a microphone in it and a headphone output. And that's all I needed. So for 30 quid, you can get yourself a pretty high quality audio interface for traveling. And this does the job. And you're not going to have to worry about the software, apart from the phantom power issue. But if that doesn't bother you, the software's always going to work on a Mac. It's core audio. It just functions as a kind of integrated system. So you never have to worry. And it also can be controlled through Logic. So you can go in there and adjust the gain and stuff of things like the microphone input when you're in Logic. So the beauty is that you don't actually have to come out of Logic to control the device. It's all done through Logic. It's all designed to work in tandem with Logic. So that is my main recommendation for a cheap audio interface for traveling with. And plus, if you lost it, it's not like you've lost a £600 or £700 interface, is it? Like an RME. You've lost like 50 quid. You know, or your bag gets stolen, or you drop it and smash it. It's so much cheaper. And the advantage is when you're traveling is you don't want something that you're going to break that costs you an absolute fortune. I love it. I think it's such a useful device. The only disadvantage is it's limited to the headphone output. But again, when you're traveling, I doubt you'll be taking anything too expensive monitor-wise with you. So I hope you enjoyed all this. If you like it, click like. If you want to, subscribe. There's going to be more. I'm going to be talking more about some of the plugins, some of the stuff I've talked about in this video I've mentioned already. There's tons and tons of stuff to come. So please check in next week, and I'll see you then.